10 goals, 6 points, a perfect week for Norwich City at Carrow Road. I'm going to put it all down to my return, although I think it's probably more to do with Kenny McLean and Marcelino Nunez and others, but never mind that. Welcome to this week's edition of the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast in association with First Bus, which is the first time that I've been able to say that, so it's brilliant to have those guys on board, and we're going to, that I didn't even mean to make that pun, but it works, so that's fine. I'm your host, Connor Southwell, back this week after my adventure to London last week, joined by Paddy Davitt, Sam Seaman, and Zak Nelson, who I probably should have asked you before we went on how you'd like to be introduced. So I'll let you introduce yourself, but you are part of First Bus. So tell us a little bit about your role first and foremost, and how I should have introduced you if I was a bit better at doing my job.
That's right. Zak Nelson is the correct way to introduce me. That is my name. I'm in the marketing team for First East of England. So we cover Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex. And together we're one First Bus team. So it's been a pleasure to get involved with the PinkUn podcast. I'm a Norwich City season ticket holder myself, so I'm glad to be here.
And you were at the game today?
I was, yes.
Brilliant. That's a great starting point, and we'll come back to Zak in a little while and talk more, because I think you've got a very special themed bus section for us, haven't you, which none of us know about yet, so I'm looking forward to that. Paddy, let's start with you then, because that was, as weeks go at Carrow Road, I think we were speaking in the international break and after West Brom last week about them needing to take steps in the right direction, almost to correct probably what happened before the international break. And we don't need to do another hour. We've done enough hours on that situation and all the mitigation surrounding it. But to get 6 points, to score 10 goals, to give your fan base that, it's an excellent, near perfect week for Norwich City.
Pretty much, Connor, yeah. And, well, I mean, Johannes said it himself on Thursday, I think it was, when we went down to speak to him at Colney. He said if you could back up the draw at West Brom, the win over Plymouth, with a win today, we're back. And that's probably the catch line for this podcast, actually. We're back because there's no doubt, yeah, those Norwich fans, Zak, and thousands like him, will have left Carrow Road tonight thinking, yeah, that's the Watford, that's the whole Norwich side that we thought this season was shaping up to be. And of course, we know in the intervening period those injuries bit hard. Kenny McLean's absence as well, suspension wise. But and the great thing is, you've still got Josh Sargent drop into there. Marcelino Nunez only gets on towards the end today. Ashley Barnes, Onel Hernandez, suddenly, and of course, the life of anything to do with Norwich, you always fear around the corner. There will be a dip, and there'll be key players who maybe are unavailable again. But if they can keep most of the key ones fit and available, what we're seeing now, on top of what we saw prior to that international downturn or pre-international downturn, is that this is a group of players under a head coach who can really be in the conversation. What that looks like in terms of at the end of the season, time will tell. But I think now 17, 18 games in, that's a big enough body of evidence for me to say that, allied to the teams who they've played, who are in and around him in the table, I think they can definitely be in that top 6, top 8 conversation. And probably from where we all started before a ball was kicked, and certainly after the first afternoon at Oxford, how poor that was, I think that's underscores what a great job Johannes and his coaching team and players have done. That you can say Norwich and promotion race and not look silly, which after that Oxford game probably would have felt the case. So yeah, great. And it's great as well that because of course when you go through that downturn, you're not sure then where is the measure. Are Norwich not as good as we thought they were from that previous spell? I think now, off the back of this week, I don't think that was premature to sort of talk up their chances of as I say, other side of Christmas being in and around the conversation for that playoff place, which is for me is certainly a higher bar than I would have set at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go into football, I was meant to say this at the start, and I've done an awful. Basically, we're without Adam, and I've had to erect a camera and do all sorts and check that microphones are working because we've got a new one. So it's completely thrown me off course, and obviously I haven't done it for a week and whatnot. So, but Paddy, your voice, as people will hear, isn't sounding in its usual pristine condition. Are you okay? First and foremost, have you got an hour left in you?
It's up for debate. I think I've got some water to hand here, so I might have to. I think there was a few comments on Thursday's presser, actually, as if, have you got a new member of team or whatever? I didn't actually.
Much better question.
Well, you took the word. That was my line then. That was my. Yeah, he's far better than the character you had before. But no, it's the same. Sadly, with the same inane questions to Johannes. But yeah, I think Johannes apparently was struggling a little bit. The head of comms told me after the game today. So And as Johannes volunteered, Jack Wiltshire's omission from the bench was purely down to he's a bit under the weather rather than he's heading back to Arsenal. But I think, it's the time of year. But certainly in the Davitt house, there's a lot of cold and flu. So the trooper that I am, I've come out and been rewarded with a performance and a win. I don't mind trying to struggle through the next hour to talk. Whether I will manage it or not, time will tell. But if not, it probably wouldn't downgrade the quality of this podcast if I just sat here quietly staring over there and you three carry on. So carry on.
Yeah, you and Anis Ben Slimani pushing yourself through 60 minutes for the rest of the team, which is great. Sam, I think Paddy's right, because in that international break, I'm sure, and maybe we'll come to Zak on this in a moment, there'll be, just for a fan's perspective, but I'm sure there would have been a lot of fans not getting concerned, but maybe putting exactly that question that Paddy said, right, even if it's to the back of the mind or front of the mind of, hang on a minute, did we get a bit carried away? Was it just a good burst of form? Is everything perhaps as rosy and as good as we thought it was? Is this a team as capable as maybe as we thought it was? And I think maybe what this week has done so effectively is just bring that tidal wave of optimism back in a really big order, because of not just the results but the performances behind it. Obviously Plymouth was a demolition job. This was a very different type of performance, but still a very capable and positive one.
Yeah, exactly, and I think you're right to say that people maybe were having those doubts, and we had that discussion, on this podcast as to whether that was a bit of a reality check about the fact that this is a season of transition for Norwich, and a lot of it is about the bigger picture rather than the here and now, and it felt like it would take time for them to get back to the levels that they reached a couple of months ago, but it does feel like they are back, and those words from Torup, it feels like we could use in probably every answer and everything that we talk about on today's podcast, because it applies in so many different ways. And as you said, a couple of different sorts of win in the last few days, but it feels like they have made real positive strides, and to be able to reach those levels without Josh Sargent, given we know how dependent they were on him last season especially, I think is really, really encouraging, because not only does it bode well for the quality of the machine and the system and the fact that it shows they aren't reliant just on individual players, but also for the future when people are watching people like Borja Sainz or Josh Sargent, especially in his recent performances, but even Marcelino Nunez, Angus Gunn, it shows people that the idea of being a selling club and maybe losing some of those talents, it doesn't mean that the whole thing is dismantled and you lose everything. I think Norwich have shown that they aren't simply a team defined by the quality of two or three individual players, and that for me is the most impressive part of the last few days and of those two wins. But yeah, it does feel like all of a sudden, and we've spoken so much about how quickly things can change in the Championship, all of a sudden that optimism is back and people are talking about playoffs again. So it does feel like a much more positive mood, and you can understand why based on those two performances.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when they were three points from the relegation zone, and there was talk of, this isn't going to be a team. And you get those. This isn't going to be a team that goes down, is it? And whatnot. So it does change, and it can change, and particularly in this league, it feels like momentum is so massive. Which probably brings us on to you, Zak, really, because as you said, you were at the game today. I'm presuming you were at the game Tuesday night as well. I mean, just give us a view from what the stands has been like during this period, because I feel like even though there has been that slump, and we obviously had Bristol City at Carrow Road and the two away games that were difficult, from a fan perspective, it does feel like they've remained relatively patient, relatively upbeat, and with the knowledge that actually once players return, that they're going to make a better impact than maybe the performances that we've seen, and so it has proven in this week, at least in this snapshot of 3 games.
Yeah, I think that's it. The players that have returned have proven themselves to be really important. At the end of the last block of games going into that international break, we were all in a good mood and we're flying high in the table, and suddenly you have the block of games where we don't win at all, and then there's another international break and we're thinking, oh my word, like this isn't great. But obviously you have Gunn out, you have McLean out, Nunez is suspended, Sargent's not here, and that's the spine of the team from bottom to top aren't playing. So it was always going to be important to get players like McLean and Gunn back, and these last 2 games have shown that. And Plymouth on Tuesday, the atmosphere was relatively normal, quite average, I think, and then as the goals start flying in, it just becomes a bit of a laugh, really. It's quite good fun. But today, I think the atmosphere in the second half, especially once Onel Hernandez had come on, I mean, if he can't do anything else, bring him on the pitch to get that crowd going. And within 5 minutes, he'd created 2 chances, flown into a defender and taken them clean out and got a yellow card. It's just chaos, and those are the moments that we live for. And obviously, then getting the assist as well, we get another 2 goals, and it's job done. 6 points in the last 4 days and 10 goals at Carrow Road in a week. I think NCFC at Numbers on X said something along the lines of that hasn't happened since like 1951 or something. Really? Completely random like that. I don't know if that's the exact year, but it was like 73 years or something, he said. I was like, so we're living in history. Enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when they produce the attacking elements that they have done, it's easy to enjoy it, particularly when, you go back to last season and then maybe, well, not just last season, maybe the last 3 possibly before this one, there wasn't that entertainment. And also on, not an NCFC Numbers sponsored podcast, but there was another one about kind of first 10 games the manager has had and the goals that have been scored. Norwich, obviously, the highest scorers in the division. Johannes Hoftorp tops that. I think he's 4 clear of Paul Lambert in his first 10 home games, and about a few more of Bruce Rioch, and then there was John Dean and Alex Neil, I think. So it's a pretty good list to top. And just on the atmosphere, Paddy, because I know that Johannes has always been quite willing to step forward and praise the supporters. But there was a moment in particular in his post-match where he was very keen, and one instant in the game, or moment in the game, that he was very keen to credit them for, which was at 2-2, where they did lose their way a bit, and they lost some of their patterns of play and some of their structure, and Luton had them pinned in for a period of time. But the fan base responded, and it produced the type of noise and atmosphere that maybe pulled the players through prior to that third goal.
There's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I felt it, as the point Zak makes, that it really ratcheted up the decibel levels at 2-2 when the game did feel in a balance. That was, by a large distance, Luton's best concerted spell of pressure and possession, and it was, the game was kind of ebbing more towards the river end, which was the complete opposite in the first half when Norwich was so dominant. I think they ended at half time. I think they had about 72% possession. And that kind of almost sense, and this is what Johannes talked about after the game, that he's got a group of players who are still going to struggle because they are, a lot of them still young, a lot of them, like, we'll get onto him in due course, maybe Antti Cernach and Forsen and Schwarthout, new to this country as well. It's a process that's going to be up and it's going to be down, and there will be moments even from here on now, even though we're discussing it in the warm afterglow of a very good week for Norwich if you're a Norwich fan at home games as well. But in those moments, it's almost like now the connection has been forged between fan base and this group of players and that head coach who's so intrinsic to this, almost repairing the bonds, if you don't want to be too melodramatic, from where it was maybe with his predecessor or predecessors, if you include Dean Smith. But that when they needed to be picked up, those players, when they did find the game going away from them a little bit, when it felt like it was Luton who were going to get that third goal at 2-2, they turned it on, and then, as Zak rightly said, then and Johannes made the point as well, you can introduce an Onel Hernandez, and he has that, as Johannes has said previously, something will happen, good or bad. It's always good, isn't it? But something will happen. Yeah. And the crowd feed off that energy, and the players around them feed off that energy. And of course, today you could introduce Núñez as well. And it's not meant to be disrespectful to that pre-international period, but the players were coming onto the pitch were nowhere near as good in terms of being able to change the flow of a game. And that was noticeable for me today, that it was the fans. It wasn't the players taking the fans with them at 2-2. It was the fans really dragging the players through, and they responded to that. And I mean, you mentioned a few of those managers, and that for me was very Lambert-esque in a lot of ways today, and Farke in the good periods where the fan base know they have to step up in those moments, those critical moments, and they deliver. And then off the back of that, the players, feed off that energy, feed off that kind of belief and support and backing. And that was really noticeable at 2-2 because. You could pick that game up, drop it into maybe a David Wagner or a Dean Smith, template, and I'm not sure it would have gone the way it went in the end. And that isn't all down to the players. It's not all down to Johannes and his coaching staff. I think that is now a set of fans who, even in a still relatively short period of time, we're only talking 3 months into Johannes's tenure, but they've seen enough evidence, I think, now that I like what this guy's about. I like the brand of football he's introducing. I like how he's improving younger players, and even Jack Stacey, and a more experienced player, what he's done to him in the last few games. And even when they face that adversity, they know that the underlying principles and tenets of what he's trying to build here are really chime with that fan base who I think are used to turning up and seeing a team on the pitch who represent them and embody what they're about and what they attach as the best attributes or the best traits of being a Norwich player. And yeah, it's so impressive that in such a short order that, you know, maybe it's, as I say, maybe it's a bridge too far to say that reconnection, because there was a lot of talk about it under David Wagner, that there was a disconnect. That was the phrase, and there was one or two people inside the club didn't like to particularly hear that phrase, that there was somehow something fractured, something broken between fan base and club. And maybe that was a bit overplayed, but it's certainly this vintage now, it feels like it is all come back together again. And Torup is the embodiment of that it's about the whole club. It's about everybody, whether you're part of the club internally or you're a fan turning up, are all pushing in the same direction and all trying to nudge this club back to where they all want to get to, which is back to the Premier League. And then hopefully this time around, or the next time around, they can have a better fist of staying there.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's that point, isn't it? It's playing style. It is people seeing and feeling that and connecting with what they're trying to do with that ideology, rather than perhaps just the style of play. And then that on top of it, obviously, it helps when you score 10 goals at home. But even prior to that, even through the difficult spell where they lost 3 in a row, there was never any real conversation about, maybe in some quarters, but not completely, about, you know, Torup and what they were trying to do and their direction of travel. Maybe there was a little bit towards the recruitment and some of the younger guys they were trying to bed in, but I think that probably was relatively fair, I think, in terms of the way that they went, and obviously the situation that they were left in with a lot of young players and players maybe who didn't have the know-how or will or weren't at the stage. You know, it's not an anti-Sinats we're talking about of now. It was of 3, 4, 5 games ago where that confidence wasn't there, and there's a few of those that they were having to rely on, and it was very difficult to do that without some leaders in the team. So much of this podcast is going to be positive, Sam, so let's get the bit that isn't so positive out of the way, and that is the concessions. I think we can probably group Jakub Sorensen on Tuesday night against Plymouth and Anis Ben Slimani into one, and maybe we'll do the set pieces in a moment. But it's weird. I'm trying to phrase this in the right way, because I don't want to say I don't mind those type of goals given away, because that's not the right. Clearly, every goal, you don't want to concede goals, but I think if Norwich are to concede goals, I'm kind of not mad that it's those ones where you are trying to play out and they're trying to play in the way that Torup wants them to do, and probably is a byproduct and a reminder of where they are on their journey as well, I think, because, you know, if they're still doing it in a year, I'll probably be a little bit angry about it. But when it's, what are we, 15, 16, 17 games in, there are going to be errors and mistakes. And I remember someone at Norwich City saying to me and Paddy in the summer that in this opening portion of the season, they're going to concede goals that make them look silly. But the reward of that is probably the fourth goal, where they build up the ball nicely. Duffy steps in and they go and create, the third goal maybe, when Marcondo scored, sorry. That's the upside of it. And it is this game of risk and reward. So where do you sit? We can come on to the set piece at the moment, but the fact that it is individual errors which feel quite coachable and mouldable, rather than being tactically outdone or it being a structural issue as it has been in the past, in a weird kind of way, is positive, is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and it was strange how that reaction worked in my mind when they did give that goal away, because instantly, obviously, you see it in the way that they conceded it, and you think in your head, oh, that's outrageous, that's a terrible error. But then quite quickly, I actually thought, no, that's exactly what, not necessarily what's supposed to happen, or it's not part of the plan. But I think everyone connected to Norwich City was told that these are the sorts of moments that probably will come at times, and I think if they could have chosen for it to be in a game where they're going to score 4 goals, they probably would have done so. And with that Sorensen one, when they obviously scored 6, so in that sense, the timing of it has gone quite well. But equally, that's part of it. And if you want to change the system from one that was a little bit old school under David Wagner, to be honest, to one that now is based a lot around not only trying to play out from the back, but trying to actually put yourself in a little bit of danger so that you then have more space and better opportunities at the other side of it. I think the communication in the summer was good, in the sense that people were told almost to expect moments like that. So I think that probably did play into the reaction, because although obviously everyone was disappointed when that went in, I didn't get the sense, and maybe Zak can give us a bit of insight on this, but I didn't get the sense that fans were especially upset by that at the time, and maybe over time that they did feel a little bit better, having thought about it and having thought about the fact that yes, it is risk and reward. And I think it plays into the wider discussion about playing out from the back, because it's so easy to jump on errors, because you turn on the highlights of any game and you watch any sports news program, and it's very easy to watch 3 seconds of somebody giving away a stupid goal. What people don't think about is the fact that before the other highlights and before the goals that are scored intricately at the other end, there probably has been a nice move to progress the ball up the pitch in your own half to then create that space. And I think the fact that Norwich fans have already seen it so many times, and they've already seen the benefits of playing out from the back so often, means that they could actually look at this and reflect and say, okay, fair enough, that happens once in a while. But for me, the mark of whether Norwich are improving will be on the ratios, because you probably can't say that there's ever going to be a season where this doesn't happen at least once, but maybe this season it happens 10 times, and then next season it happens 5 times, and then the season after that it's only 2. So yeah, I think for me it was the sort of error that you can accept, definitely more acceptable than some of the defending that we've seen at various times this season, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. But yeah, for me, as soon as logically I processed it, I realised that maybe it wasn't as outrageous as it might have looked when that goal first went in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you want the upsides of what Norwich are going to do by building up and trying to create opportunities, then you have to accept the flip side of that, which is inevitably going to be concessions, and relatively cheap concessions as well. But I think maybe what's more frustrating, Zach, is the set piece goal that Norwich conceded today. But probably, they conceded one. I know it wasn't the first phase of a set piece, but it was from a set piece that it was the opening goal, wasn't it, last weekend, that they conceded. There does seem to still be that vulnerability with set pieces, which probably is more frustrating, because that is something that feels a lot more fixable than perhaps the individual errors, which feel like part of a process. This is something that you hope to see eradicated pretty quickly, particularly given maybe the stream, I guess, of set pieces, not just goals that they've conceded. I think they've looked pretty vulnerable generally. I'm not sure if you agree.
Yeah, to an extent. I think it's difficult trying to get used to a new set piece coach. Obviously, we've had Andy Hughes last season, and suddenly we were quite good at set pieces, which was a nice change for Norwich fans to look at corners and free kicks and think, yes, we actually might score here. Whereas before, like even through Daniel Farke's reign, it was just kind of like we don't score from set pieces, and with Farke as well, we'd always concede set pieces. That's how it felt. So there's always still jitters every corner we concede, every free kick we concede, but not only do I think that's just Norwich City, that's football really. I mean, that's why set pieces are set pieces. They're penalties, as it were, for you committing fouls, and we can benefit from them, and we'll take it when it goes against us. But it's good that we've started scoring from set pieces. I think on Tuesday we'd scored from the corner, obviously, with good old Shane Duffy rising like a salmon, and he nearly got another one today. So yeah, we thought history was repeating itself. So yeah, it's good that we've started doing that. So like Sam said, with the mistakes and stuff, as long as we're still scoring at the other end, I don't think it really matters that much.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to do a thorough breakdown of team by team, Sam, but I'd say Norwich have probably lost a few. I don't know, feet's probably a bit extreme, but they've lost a few inches, haven't they, in terms of the team that they are fielding at this moment in time. I also think from an attacking perspective, there's been a quality of delivery point up until Mark Conders has stepped in and started taking them. So I think there probably is maybe reasons for why they've struggled from set pieces generally. But, I think it does become easy he's the set piece coach, it's all on him, which feels a bit harsh. I think there are reasons maybe why they're a little bit more vulnerable this year, which maybe is about height and is about physicality and the slight change. It's a younger team as well. It didn't have maybe the experience that David Wagner's team did.
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually thinking about this the other day, and it probably is the disadvantage of having people as specific as a set-piece coach, where you do get the benefits of maybe looking a bit more intelligent, and you get that feeling that the club is, looking into every nook and cranny in terms of how they can, find these minor gains. But then when your name is or your title is set-piece coach, every single set piece, you're the person who's judged for that. But, as you say, I think not only is it the fact that there are those things outside of Nick Stanley's control, but it's not just him deciding on the set pieces. You know, he's got a head coach who he reports into and who will be important in those decisions. There's a number of other people on that coaching setup and in the analysis department who are working on it. So it is quite a big team that sort of makes those decisions and is working on those things. So I wouldn't put it all down to Nick Stanley, but it does still feel like they should be doing better from what they've got, because Marcondes came in as a bit of a sort of free kick specialist and a corner specialist, and they have, you know, albeit they did get off the mark, and that was very encouraging. It's still only one this season, and although they have maybe lost a couple of inches, they have got a good few players in there who you'd say are capable of scoring from those scenarios. Kenny McLean, Shane Duffy, Ante Cianats actually, and Torup has said he wants more from him aerially. And you look at the goals previously in his career, he has scored quite a few headers and he has provided that threat before. So I think Norwich could be doing better still within what they've got, but equally there are other reasons why maybe they're struggling a little bit, and I wouldn't put it all down to Nick Stanley, although I'm sure he is looking at that current record and feeling a little bit aggrieved because, yeah, things aren't going amazingly at the moment, and as many positives as there are to talk about, and of course we will, that to me feels like, if not the easiest, then the most direct route to improving things for Norwich, because it feels like quite a glaring problem for them at the moment, and given some of their recent results, there aren't too many of those. So I'm sure they'll be focusing on them in the next few weeks, and hopefully we see some of the results of that.
I tell you what I am enjoying Marcondes' various signals at corners. There's that one, the sort of rub of the belly. There's a rub of the back I saw today. There was like a plain wing one as well. There's lots of different ones, and I'm enjoying. I'd like to see how creative he gets during the season. I mean, what we're going to get him like do charades? Yeah, exactly. He's going to. We've got plenty more body parts that he can utilise. But Paddy, we've got to talk about maybe the attacking play for Norwich City this week, and I think the biggest aspect in it, and this we'll maybe speak about Jack Stacey in the second half of the show, but it feels like Torup and his coaching team have found a way to just get some more productivity out of that right side. And clearly, when you mention that, Jack Stacey's a big part of it. But you think about not just the goals that they were scoring, but the chances they were creating. They were beginning to feel a little bit lopsided because everything was coming through Borja Sainz. And it feels what this week has been about from an attacking perspective is really opening up that right side by, yes, having Stacey doing what he does. And we'll maybe speak about that in his role in a bit more detail. But equally, it's been about, inverting a man called Forson, who, okay, maybe individually hasn't had the best performances, but in terms of functionality, that's been a successful, probably, experiment. So it feels like it's been about opening up the flanks for Norwich City this week in terms of their attacking productivity.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll get into Stacey in due course, but that's basically what Johannes said after today's game, that kind of post-Bristol. Bristol, I think, was the watershed in terms of, I think he talked today, post-match, in terms of the tank was empty. That group of players had given all they could. There was no more to give. So, thankfully, the way the fixtures fell, that was the last one going into that international break. And I think an intervening period, that, according to Johannes, was what they worked on. Is, we can't be so heavily dependent on Borja Sainz, because at some point, that isn't a recipe that's going to be sustainable. He's going to have dips. There's going to be games, and you saw it again today, where teams will double and triple up on him. They needed something from the other flank, and I guess not helped by Cernach having to then shift inside from having been that right-hand side of the attacking three. But in a sergeantless sort of squad for now, then they had to be a bit more creative. And I know it's only 3-game sample, but Forson, as you say, slightly more inverted, allowing Stacey to play his natural game, has really unlocked something. Certainly offering that threat that wasn't there hitherto. But we'll probably park the Stacey debate, because it isn't simply about Jack Stacey is a very good attacking fullback, get him in the side again and get somebody inside him. There's a bit more to it, to the influence that he's exerting on this team at the moment. But also, I mean, you can't underestimate Marcondes, what a transformational presence he's been. Such an intelligent player. He clearly has the licence and the freedom to almost roam across those areas, the width of the 18-yard box. And, some of the positions he takes up, Slimani back in today. Okay, first goal they conceded was, not a positive from him, but overall another very, very intelligent footballer, technically good. Some of the play, that almost wing mirror element to those two midfielders that I've mentioned there, that they can take a ball in tight spaces, they can have players around them, yet their peripheral vision, they know whether it's spinning out. There was one moment there where Slimani completely sold a dummy to, I'm not sure who the Luton player was, but they'd almost jumped anticipating, and he just body swerved the other way in the first half and checked out, went to the left-hand side on that occasion. But there was ample evidence where it was the other way around, and it was whether it was Stacey primarily or Forson as well. And so I think it's wider, or it's bigger than simply Jack Stacey's come back in and don't they look better down the right-hand side. I think it's clearly interlinked and overlain with, Marcondes' growing influence on this side. And obviously Cernach as well. We have to, be honest that Cernach's mobility, he looks a lot better. Johannes spoke on Thursday that getting him into areas of the pitch and understanding that he needs to be in slightly better areas when he receives the ball, and then what he does when he does receive the ball. And you can see again today, some intelligent movement in and around the box. And I think that's probably confidence coming out of that West Brom game. That felt like, a line in the sand, that they'd gone to a very difficult place if you look at Championship home records, and went toe-to-toe with that team and could have nicked it at the end of that game. And I think the belief subsequently that they've carried into Plymouth and then into Luton is really elevated individuals, but the collective performance as well, particularly on the ball. And, it had to happen. They had to evolve to being something more than we simply rely on ball science, and if he doesn't bang one in from 25 yards, the game's up, which, Bristol was a good example of that. Bristol were good at shutting him down that day, and they didn't offer too much else. But again, in very short order, in the space of an international window, Torup and Riddisholm and Wiltshire now and the other coaches have come up with something that, feel quite innovative, because I don't think any of us maybe would have said, what's the answer, that to almost rebalancing the right-hand side of that Norwich team, that the answer would be a Mankell Forson in the Cernach position, ostensibly starting position, not the same probably areas of the pitch, and then Stacey behind him. I think that's, again, very creative from the coach.
Yeah, agreed. And it's going to be interesting to see how that develops, because obviously Callum Fisher came in at a left back today, and I thought that maybe didn't have to. It helped them in possession, but maybe sort of not nullified, that's the wrong term, but I think it maybe hindered their route to Borja Sainz maybe than what we've seen, where they've had an actual left footer option there for obvious reasons. Fisher's forced into the pitch, he's right footed, they want him to invert, and then obviously they've changed what they do on the right side a little bit, so they've got it's a nice position to be in because of where they were a few weeks ago. But it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves, and can they get Fisher and Stacey in the same team without maybe having that effect negatively on Borja Sainz and his route, whilst obviously retaining a lot of what Stacey wants to do. Is that possible? Obviously they've got Cordoba to come in as well, so there's a lot of, I think, moving parts of that defence that it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds, and agree on Marcondes. I mean, it's amazing to think that A, he didn't have a club at the end of the transfer window, and B, he came as an emergency kind of addition to add a little bit to the squad, and he's quickly proven himself to be a really important player. And we'll maybe discuss the midfield in part two, as well as Ante-dote, as well as Jack Stacey, and all of the good stuff as well to come very shortly. But we will see you in a second for part two. Welcome back to the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. This is part two, and this is a podcast sponsored by First Bus. And you can see they've very kindly, thank you, Zak, decorated our backdrop, so there shouldn't be any more kind of blank space or anything like that. There's some nice and very good adverts in the background about electric buses and night buses and all of that good stuff. So yeah, they're a brilliant addition. So thank you very much, Zak, for livening up our backdrop. I recognise that does nothing for our audio listeners, but there we go. And on the First Bus theme, we'll go straight into our Just the Ticket segment, as Adam Harvey, who stepped in for me last week, very brilliantly introduced. This is a segment which is all about a player which is just the ticket. That's what it says on the tin, essentially. So which player has maybe stood out from a match, or because we've had two this week, we have the option of two matches, which should hopefully give us a little bit of variation in answers. So Zak, since you're our guest, and we're always very polite, I'll let you go first. So 2 games to choose from. So from this block of 2 games, what's the Norwich City player or thing? We won't just narrow it down to players, that's been just the ticket for you?
Well, I'm glad you've allowed me to go first, because I think obviously with these two I'll be them having to think of something else, because I think my answers are going to be quite obvious. It may have been Stacey after today, and then when Cernats selflessly squared the ball to Marcondes, I'm going to have to say Ante Cernats in these last couple of games has proven all the doubters wrong, hasn't he? You put him in the right position, get a few minutes under your belt, and then suddenly, bam, 3 goals, an assist today, and he's looking like a really good addition. And I mean, we don't miss Josh Sargent at the moment. How weird is it to say that? I'm wondering what's going to happen when he comes back if Cernats stays in the form that he's currently in. Is he going to walk straight back in or not? Obviously, he's out for a long time, so it might make sense to kind of ease him back in. And at the moment, we've scored 10 goals without our top scorer from last season. Do we need him back?
That's a good, we'd like him back. That's definitely for sure. But yeah, it's a very good point, and we will definitely speak more about that man in a moment. I don't know who's going to go first. Go on, Sam. There's an obvious one, I think. Then one of you, I think, is going to have to be a little bit creative. So Sam, let's see what route you go down.
Well, I feel like this is fairly creative. I definitely don't think it's that obvious, especially.
Okay.
But everyone's been playing pretty well, so I was trying to just go through the 11 in my head then, and I thought nobody's really a surprise. But I'll say Callum Doyle, who I actually thinking about it. I think I said him last week, but I think has performed.
He's not paid you, has he? During the international break, it's not been a backhander, a brown envelope.
Yeah. He's obviously he's seen my comments prior to the international break, and he's thought I need to get the PR machine back on my side. No, I just
it's probably a Man City conspiracy that would slip in.
Yeah, no, I just think it's easy to criticise defenders when you concede as many goals as Norwich have, and equally, I'm sure there are some minor ways that Doyle could have done better, having conceded 3 goals in the last 4 days. But I actually think on an individual level he's been pretty good, and I gave him his fair share of criticism before the international break because I thought it was actually quite a significant drop-off from his early standards in a Norwich shirt, and we obviously subsequently learned that he'd had a bit of a knock that he was playing through, and I think we all know that he's not really a natural left-back. So to see him back in that centre-back role, having had that international break to rest, I think although he probably isn't still quite at the levels that he was going into it, I think he looks much, much more like the sort of player that he was and is. And actually, in a defensive sense, I thought he coped really, really well with Luton, especially today. I think you look at the way that they play, and mainly you'd say Shane Duffy is the man who's going to be dealing with those long balls forward, and with a physical Carlton Morris and Adebayo up there. But I actually thought Doyle did a lot of that, and he did it really, really well. I can't remember too many times when he was beaten or lost a duel, and there was one really, really good interception in the first half when there was a ball whipped in. It looked like a tap in for Morris, and he slid in and on his weaker right foot managed to clear the ball. And yeah, I think obviously you have to look at defensive issues when you concede that number of goals, but I'd mainly be looking at the structure because I think individually he's been very good, and it's good to see him back somewhere near the form that we saw at the start of the season.
Yeah, and looking more comfortable at centre-back as well. Paddy, who's your answer? I'm amazed that, well, there is an obvious one to be had.
What would the obvious one be, Connor?
Well, I'd say Jack Stacey, but I'll let you maybe.
Do you want Jack Stacey?
Well, I've got different answers, so it's fine if you want to give Jack Stacey.
No. I was trying to.
But you don't have to.
I was trying to run away from the crowd,
okay.
And I'm going to say Johannes. Basically,
that was going to be my answer.
Was it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not running completely away from the crowd, no. But sorry about that, Connor.
That's all right.
Only in the sense of, there was a lot of, well, it was the mitigation for that downturn. Those 3 games they lost on the spin. I think there was probably still just is this a coach who's suddenly hit the buffers in terms of coming into an English football, coming into the Championship in England as well, and maybe being caught out a little bit. Not saying that I would have concurred or agreed with that summation, but that was probably going to be there. After off the back of 3 games where they did look quite toothless, and defensively the issues we referenced there were there, whether it be set pieces or just in general play, and he must have gone away from that and felt this isn't just a test for my players now, this is a test for me, particularly as the leader of this group. And even allowing for that mitigation with injuries to go away, and we talked about it in that segment, the creativity in terms of how they've almost reconnected the right-hand side of the attacking potential to what they were doing on the left with ball science. That's good coaching. It's good coaching with Cernach as well, and not just on the pitch, but I thought the way he broke that down, was it would have been prior to the Plymouth game, I think, in the Colney presser, was it was just listening to him, you just thought, you can understand why these players are really responding. It's head coach that he embraced completely that no, he's a young player and he's new to England, but no, we expect him now to be delivering. So there was no shying away from that, but it was all wrapped around this cast iron belief from his head coach that no, this guy will be a big player for us moving forward. And of course, the player then has to go out and deliver, and boy has he done that this past week. But that's good coaching, because that wasn't just, for me, it felt like it wasn't just messaging for Norwich's fan base to stick with him and get behind him. It was for that guy as well. I'm sure the messages were designed publicly as well as being delivered privately to give him that boost. No, we believe in you still. We paid a lot of money for you. That's how highly we think you are in terms of a potential player. We're going to work with you to try and reach that potential, but we also want you now to show a little bit more than you have done maybe thus far. And again, that for me is very, very good man management. And it's all come together this week, and now nobody will be remotely questioning that is Johannes Torp been found out, has his style of play been found out, have teams worked him out, has he been caught out by the Championship, So for me, he has been very impressive in this spell when, I remember, my mind goes back to the Hillsborough game, when he was sat there and he looked a little bit dejected, a bit sick, and kind of like, I don't know where the answers are quite coming from here now at the moment, because we're so far off it. And I'm sure he had that frustration that they were so far below the levels they'd reached in the Hull game, in the Watford game, Derby away. And that would have been a source of, where he thought maybe this thing is moving now, and they got the stone going downhill, that that momentum had very clearly ran into a bit of a brick wall. But the fact that him and his coaching staff have set the right tone and the behaviours and the cultures around that place to produce a week where they've now, looking back at 7 points from 9, 10 goals at home, and a real sense of momentum now re-injected into this season. That all starts for me from Johannes. And if I'm a Norwich fan, I think it's okay, eulogising when things are going well and it feels like everything comes effortlessly. But this has been his first real difficult spell, and to come out the other side of it and deliver the response they have on the pitch, that says a lot about him as a coach. I think it just reinforces the sort of belief that Norwich have probably got a very good operator in their midst, and that even though he's getting to grips with the Championship and it is new to him in English football, that he's still able to kind of decode it and come out the other side, and because he will know, as he said about those players, as he said about the fan base, that there will be dips now on the road between now and May, but I'm sure they can lean into a period like this now that they've come through something like this and come out the other side. So yeah, bit of a long-winded answer, but Johannes is just the ticket.
Yeah, I would agree with basically everything you said there. I would throw in as well, I think the fact that what he's shown over these last 2 games, I was pleased actually to see some changes today, because if you think back to that cycle just before they had those injuries, and I think they had a 3-game week, and he named unchanged teams, I think, for all of them. And this week there's been changes in every single game. There's made a recognition that you can't just go 3 games with the same 11 players and push them over a period. And equally, some very good management in terms of getting Marcondes off towards the end, Science off towards the end, and whatnot. So, and I thought he was pretty honest pre-game as well with the McLean Hull sort of stuff as well. What was it? He hated himself for that. It felt very strong. But that's I think almost an insight into what he's like, obsessive in a good sense, and all of those elements. And Norwich do some very advanced things as a team, tactically, the way that they interchange some of the positions that they take up, the relationships between players. They're not easy things to coach, over a season, and that's plural, let alone over 17 league games. What he's been able to implement and just how flexible this Norwich team are maybe speaks to what you spoke about. Sometimes they build up with a free and they invert a right back. Sometimes they push a left back in. Sometimes they invert both full backs and they play with almost like a 2-3. It's just so subtle and really intelligent stuff they're doing that I think paints the picture of what you spoke about as well as all of the communication side. So he would have been my answer, but I'll go with I had a fullback, which is good. I'll go for Jack Stacey, who I think we've spoken about, 4 assists this week. He's come back and really made an impact. I thought it was interesting. I felt there's been a little bit of a not odd. That's a stretch, but I think there's almost been a little bit of a rewriting of a narrative that maybe he wasn't actually that good last season, and I thought he was pretty consistent with some deficiencies, and that was largely I think because he was just told to run pretty vertically and support attacks, and there didn't feel like a lot of nuance to him or a lot of layers to him. I think what we've seen actually in these last 2 games is that he's probably a better player than what we saw last season, because there's been that comfort in possession that maybe you wouldn't necessarily associate with Jack Stacey. And I'll be honest, he was one of the players that I looked at in pre-season when Johannes Hoftorp arrived and sort of thought, I'm not quite sure where he fits, because he didn't feel like he was comfortable in possession, didn't really feel like he sort of fitted the mould of what they wanted. But I think what he's done differently, I know Johannes is quite self-deprecating when he speaks about Jack Stacey and how he's a stupid coach in Denmark holding him back and all this stuff, but I actually think what it's allowed them to do is coach him, and you watch him now and there's a better intelligence of when to go and commit and when to go forward and when that space is there to go and attack and when to go and join the attacking phases, and equally when not to, when to sit back and when to allow Norwich that space from an attacking perspective. You look maybe for the 4th goal where if he goes and overlaps Hernandez when he's 1v1 with Bell, kills that attack, kills it. The 4th goal doesn't happen. He was intelligent enough to stay back, to give Hernandez the room that he needed to beat his man and cut the ball back. So I think the improvement is, yes, down to Jack Stacey, but it's equally down to really good coaching. I think, for all of maybe the talk of the younger players improving, Jack Stacey deserves a big pat on the back as well as to how he's been able to receive information and, maybe proof that the dip out was right and has allowed them to do a lot of good work for him to come back and add to his game, but also add to Norwich City's game as well. So, I'll go for Jack Stacey. It's kind of a linked answer, I think, between him and Johannes, but it works. Let's speak anti-Cianats then, because it was my little boy's 5th birthday last Thursday, so we took him to see Paddington Bear, which was great. I got a hug off Paddington, which I wasn't sort of expecting. Bear hug, so that was good. And I think chasing.
You took him, or rather, you wanted to go and see
Paddington. I'm a big Paddington fan, yeah. So I'm not armed with any marmalade, sadly, but I was chasing him around Westfield shopping centre when Norwich were playing West Brom. But it did mean that I got to sort of listen to the podcast as you guys do, and sort of that was good. And I listened on, as many of the guys watching and listening did, is I think you guys had a discussion around strikers, and I don't want to call any of you out, but I think the question was essentially who would you go for this stretch with Plymouth and who'd they play, say Luton, and I think all of you said you would drop Cianats out for Hernandez. Now I'm not saying that to dig you guys out. I'm saying that
only as a striker.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying that I think that is a reflective mood of the fan base after that performance at West Brom, where there was a lot of question marks about what is he, what does he offer, what can Norwich do to get him more into the game. And then clearly this week he's answered a lot of those criticisms. And for Plymouth, I think we can have a debate about the quality of them, and it wasn't great, and we saw that, and I think they got whacked 4-0 again today against Bristol City. So we can debate the level of quality it was against, but it felt like a really important moment because yes, he had the goal at Stoke, but it was the first time I really saw a performance from him, an all-round performance, and I think we saw that again today. And I think what epitomised it for me today, this is maybe a guy that's grappling with it now, that is sensing it, is Norwich's 3rd goal. And it's not just, obviously, the pass and the decision not to shoot, but it's before that, when Duffy plays the ball in, and there's a moment there with him and McGuinness, who gets to the ball first. He's quicker to the ball first. He then takes it round him. And then there's that awareness when you're on a hat-trick, the goal opens up. If it was me, I'd have shot, I'll be honest. And I think if it was most Norwich players, I don't think anyone would have blamed him in the stands or in the dugout if he'd have opted for a shot. But instead, it's that decision to make a good chance, a great chance. It's the first goal, that second touch to hook it to first goal. So I'm getting confused with the goals, where he hooked it to open the chance up. the evidence that he's built over this week has been, I don't know if he listened, but it's been a pretty good riposte, I think, to maybe some of the question marks that you guys, it wasn't me, I can shake it off.
You've never criticised him at any point this season.
I've always said he's brilliant.
But you're using a lot of hindsight for a lot of heavy lifting here.
To be fair, and I'm not even saying this for hindsight, because I did think it at the time, I probably would have said to keep him in, but
Of course you would.
I appreciate that he can say it with hindsight, but that's beside the point. It's been a really good week for him, hasn't it? And the week that he needed, probably.
Well, I'll only refer you, Connor, to Giannis, which I touched on previously, his rather detailed dissection, which I'm pretty sure was the pre-Plymouth presser.
Yeah, it was.
Which would have been the Monday, so that 2 days after we recorded that podcast. And he was chiming, I thought, a similar note that he felt, I kind of didn't really agree that he felt there was positive signs at West Brom. I thought it was more of the same for me in terms of a little bit colourless, he wasn't the physicality that you need to sort of wrestle with defenders a little bit and give your team something in terms of a platform. Wasn't there, I didn't think, at the Hawthorns, as it wasn't in those games prior to the international break. But Johannes thought he saw something positionally a little bit more, and then in his answer elaborated that that's what they've been working with him, about getting him in better positions on the pitch and understanding. He talked about wanting him to be first touch finishing. I'm trying to think now off the top of my head. I think that obviously the first goal today wasn't, because he had to manoeuvre it, but the second was a first touch finish. Mm-hmm. He talked about aerially, he wants to see a bit more from him in terms of his physicality. He should be better in the air than he is, but could have scored a header on Tuesday, to be fair. Bar a great save. Exactly, yeah. Was it a great save?
I think watching it back, it was a better save than I thought in real time.
I don't know. I'd be inclined to think he should have buried that. But so even pre-Plymouth, we're talking in terms of, no, he needs to deliver. These are the areas we're asking him to work on. But from there, full credit to the guy himself, that he's gone out, delivered against Plymouth, got his goal at the end. But it was as part of an overall far more potent, far more influential display, I felt, irrespective of how poor Plymouth were on the night. But backs it up again today. Both those goals were very similar, and we've heard that a lot from Giannis this season. A lot of the time when he's talking about ball science, that if the chances are very similar, that's good structure, that's players understanding their roles within the structure. And both of those strikes today were sort of central goal, 10 yards out or so. Obviously then he's got to do a little bit of work on the first goal, but then even the third goal, you could see the area where he picks the ball up is a similar area, and that awareness. And on that point, Giannis after the game today, he's drawn a parallel with Sargent. You think back to the Derby game, when he was very selfless in terms of serving up chances for science, and that's what he wants from his number 9. Almost the goals, in Giannis's view, were less of a currency than what he did, that decision he made for that third goal, where he's seen Marcondes in a better situation and fed him the ball, and then the chance becomes a very easy chance then, rather than him taking the shot on. But that's, for Johannes, is a player who's really evolving into that number 9 in his side, that the mantle that Sargent was carrying. So, it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? If he has another 5 games as a striker and he doesn't score, then we'll be back here again, won't we? And we'll say, well, that was a bit of a blip that week he had. But I don't think that will be the case now. I think something has changed, whether it's with him, whether it's with his teammates, whether it's how the coaches perceive him, but whether it's just confidence now, that he now looks a far more confident player. And why wouldn't you? You've had to deal with that. I probably should bowl it back to you, because you have actually spoken to the guy himself after the game, and I think he's talked about a little bit about the price tag and how that's weighed a bit heavy on him, and the expectancy that comes with it. So even the player himself has acknowledged that he hasn't delivered what he felt he was capable of delivering. But credit where credit's due. This past 2 games, as Zak made the point earlier, nobody's talking about how big a miss is Josh Sargent after these last 2 home games. Now it's, for me, if he maintains this trajectory, when Josh Sargent is fit and available, he's not an automatic shoe-in back into the side. Yes, he probably does come back in because of his body of work up to this point. But now there's a debate. There was certainly no debate pre-Plymouth in terms of Ante Cernach could do a justifiable impression of Josh Sargent, and that's testament to him that something has changed. And I think I put it in my pointers, actually, that we may now look back on this week, these last 4 or 5 days, as a watershed moment in in his Norwich debut season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I spoke to him post games. First time I think we've had the opportunity to speak to him, and very, very good English. But it was interesting. He kind of made the point that, for him, it's kind of the second time that he's done this. He had 12 months in Poland, and then you have to change country again after kind of doing it and adapting to one. Suddenly you're thrust into another. Yeah, there was the point about the price tag, and how I think he basically said something along the lines of, "Look, I don't read it" or whatnot. And later on in the interview, I sort of asked him about how he felt fans singing his name, and he didn't realise they were singing his name. So maybe that's kind of helped. But I think he kind of said that he's kind of felt that pressure of the price tag. Definitely said it's been a tough period for him personally, and adapting to life in a new country and a new league. And he's only 20. I think it's easy to forget how incredibly young he is. But yeah, it feels like a real marked change, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing more from him with Norwich now having a settled midfield, which probably brings us on to our next point. And this maybe is a question for all of you guys, because I think now, and it's nice to be, as I say, it's nice to be in this position where we're talking about selection dilemmas for positive reasons and because of options coming back. But we saw Nunez come back. I thought he was very assured when he came on and helped Norwich possessionally, and at a point where the game maybe was beginning not to run away from them, but they just lost their way a little bit. So they've now obviously got McLean back. They've got Slimani, who I think over the last 2 games has really stepped up his output and what he's done. And I think they've managed his minutes quite well, with obviously him being a substitute on Tuesday and then starting here today. They've got Marcondes, who we mentioned and touched upon, is doing very well. And who's the one that I've forgotten? Is slipped my mind. But they've got those 4 anyway, whichever one I haven't mentioned. So there is now a real debate, Sam, I think, about who plays there when everyone's fit. So we know that he goes with a 4-3-3. So what would be your 3, I guess, for QPR to kind of throw this forward?
It's kind of a semi-tough one, but I have to say, seeing him come on, even as a substitute this afternoon, I think even I had forgotten, even as a fan of a footballer like that, of players of that profile, I'd forgotten how exciting he is to watch and what a talented player he is. But just seeing him out there, almost without a care in the world, just producing Cruyff turns here and there, and
playing out from his own byline.
Exactly, yeah. I did find it quite funny how his first touch for probably about what is it, 6 weeks or something, after a massive cheer from the crowd,
serenaded,
was whacking a free kick so far out for a goal kick. Nobody was anywhere near it. But after that moment, he improved a lot, and I think reminded everyone what a talent he is. And I suppose there's a case that he has been injured for a long while. He's now only played a handful of minutes as a substitute, but we know physically what he's like. He covers ground like almost nobody else in that team. Maybe nobody else in that team. I think Kenny McLean is the only one who really rivals him. And for me, I think he has to be in there. It's worth saying that rotation is always probably preferable. And as you mentioned, I think it's been good to see that Torup's been a bit more open to doing that in the last few games, and I think now that he has those options, he'll probably be doing that in the future. So it's not necessarily that the midfield 3 he starts against QPR is the one going forward, and whoever misses out, has to sit on the bench feeling sorry for themselves. But I think for me the best 3 is McLean, Nunez, Marcondes, and I'm a fan of Slimane's. I think he's quite an exciting player to watch. He's got a bit of flair, and he's got a bit of maybe some more old school creativity, because this is a team that's built on a system that definitely is effective and definitely is entertaining, but he has a bit more of that maverick quality, and maybe Nunez has that as well. But I feel like Slimane is quite likely to produce something out of nothing, and maybe Norwich don't have as much of that quality as they have in previous teams. But for me, that 3 covers almost all bases. It gets across a lot of ground. Physically, there's a decent amount in there as well. There's a good positional understanding defensively and offensively. And I think although it would have been a fairly cut and dried midfield of McLean, Nunez and Slimane before, Marcondes has come in and been maybe Norwich's best player since he signed for the club. So yeah, I think it has to be that 3 for me, but it is quite a tough call. And leaving one of those players out, and the fact that one of those is going to be on the bench for QPR, is both very sad for them, given some of the performances they've been producing, but also great news for Norwich and the squad depth that they've got at the moment.
How do you see it, Zach? What's your midfield three?
I'll probably echo Sam in a way. I know that's the boring choice, but so you've just said it all. But I think, forgetting all context, the best three is at the moment Marcondes, Nunes, and McLean. And it's almost like, thank goodness we had some injuries there, because obviously without them, Marcondes wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So every cloud and all that. I don't necessarily think that would be the right decision going into Saturday, just because of what happened last time when Nunes was kind of rushed back, and he's got some minutes a day, which is really good. But I expect to see Slimani in there again at the weekend against QPR. I'm just glad I'm not the head coach, because that is a really tough decision to make at the moment.
Yeah, it is, and I'm sure it's one that he welcomes. Like you say, from the position that he was in. I mean, I'm just thinking, Paddy, Norwich have a bit of a right wing problem. Is there a possibility that you could get all of them into the same team? We saw Slimani come on there on Tuesday night. Obviously, then very quickly had to go back into midfield with Liam Gibbs, which we're probably not going to mention any more than this fleeting comment. But absolutely devastating for him to see him ruled out again for a significant period. He's had no luck really this year, and obviously, hopefully he gets back pretty quickly. But he played that role. I sort of have in my head whether Marcondes could do it, but I quite like how they sort of utilise him as a wider option to bring Sainz inside, so I'm not quite sure if that would work. And then I guess to throw into maybe the right wing conversation, I guess we've got to put Onel Hernandez in there, haven't we? Because this is a position that hasn't really been nailed down, and that's a guy who has the potential to do it. And today, for all of the talk about chaos and whatnot, there was a real moment of quality with that cutback for Borja Sainz. So maybe if we push this midfield debate onto the right wing, could you see one of Slimani, Marcondes being pushed into that position on El Hernandez potentially?
I mean, the way you map it out there, Connor, it's a difficult one. It really is. Yeah, and I don't think Torp strikes me as somebody who likes to create additional issues, and throw more pieces up into the air. So no, I mean, everything so far in how he's gone about his team selection is so structurally very settled, and even the players within it, if you've got those players available, the key players. So no, I think Nunes and McLean shoe-ins in his preferred central three. So with the caveat at right now, given how Nunes sort of broke down at Stoke that time, do you actually throw him in at the start against QPR? I could see a scenario where he doesn't, in which case it's a redundant debate, because it'd be the three he went with today, wouldn't it? And he'd retain Forson on the right. So I could see that scenario playing out. But I think moving beyond maybe the next sort of 2 or 3 games, and Nunes is back up to speed, he has to start for the reason Sam outlined. Definitely, such a key player in this system. Such a talismanic figure almost. And I don't think too many would have thought that about a Nunes prior to Torp coming in the building, that he is so influential in the way that this guy wants to progress the ball from back to front, allied to the energy and the drive he injects into that midfield. So I think moving forward, QPR maybe slightly different, but moving forward, those two, McLean, Nunes, and then you've got to, if Marcondes continues, he's got to find a place for him in the team. So it's just whether then you would, to take your point, Connor, whether you would then accommodate maybe all 4, and that would shift maybe Forson out of the mix, or even dropping Onel into that situation. I don't really see that. That seems like a degree too much in terms of experimentation. I think in an ideal world, once Sargent's back, I think you'll see Sargent, you'll see Cernak, you'll see Sainz, and behind them you'll see McLean, Nunes, and right now one of Slimani or Marcondes, I think. And that would be a pretty strong 6, getting you at the top end of the pitch.
Yeah, agreed. I always wonder if they'll get themselves to a place where it'll maybe dependent on opposition, and maybe for those home games we'll see a Marcondes, Nunez one, and maybe away from home we'll see a Slimani, Nunez sort of double with McLean behind them. So that's going to be really interesting. Of course, let us know who your midfield three would be as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment that below, or if you're listening the old-fashioned way, then you can get in touch with us, of course, on socials. Right, Zach, I'm going to sort of open the floor to you and your mystery bus segment, which I'm very excited about. So, yeah, let's throw over to you. Tell us what you've got in store.
Is that the first time you've ever said you're excited about buses? Is the first question.
Yes,
Excellent.
it probably
That's
is.
my
yeah.
job done then. I might as well leave. So obviously I know quite a bit about Norwich City. I've been a season ticket holder for 7-8 years. But I want to know how much you guys know about the buses in Norwich.
Oh, here we go.
So
Okay.
I'll leave it up to you with how many you guess. But I've got a starting 11 from the current squad with
Okay.
squad numbers that match the services in Norwich.
Oh, this is
No.
good. This is good.
And
It's gonna be
the
badly.
players' squad numbers, or not the players' squad numbers, sorry, the players are in the positions, like I'm putting them in the position that they play in. So it's not like you can have 3 wingers across the front 3,
Okay.
unless that winger can play up front, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, who wants to go
Okay,
first?
I'll kick things off because I know the route to UEA, that's
Oh,
25.
I was going to
So
say
that's-
that one.
That's going to be on El Hernandez.
Correct, yes. There it is over there, the night bus, overnight now.
Yeah, to be fair,
25,
that literally is right behind me. So if I'd have looked across
Oh,
my
yeah.
shoulder, I would have got that.
Yeah, Ono Hernandez
Ono-
on the pitch, yeah.
Sam, do you want to take one?
I actually saw one. I wouldn't have known this a few days ago, but I saw one go past. Is number 10 to Eaton Park? So Ashley Barnes would
Correct,
be up
yeah.
front, right?
He is the
There you
striker
go.
which I've got
There's
on my
one.
list.
Here you go,
No,
Paddy.
no chance.
It's a clean
I'm
sweep so far.
Sorry, I've got absolutely no chance. I can tell you about the X27 because I got that to Faken on a few months. But
Was it very pleasant?
That's technically, I don't know who's. Is there a 27 in the Norwich squad?
It's X29.
Sorry,
X29.
Oh, there you go.
There you
Let's
go,
pay
yeah.
attention more now.
Yeah, but that's not really the name of this game, is it? So
No, there's no X's.
I'm trying to think what buses go out to where I live. That's Thorpe St Andrew way, but sadly when you've got 2 children, it's basically bundle them in the car. So yeah, I'm really gonna have to be pretty poor on this, boys, and throw it back to you.
I've got in my head that there's a 19, which would be Jakob Sørensen.
There is not a 19 in Norwich. This will be first bus routes only, obviously, as well. So
Yeah, yeah. Is there a?
See, I don't think there's a number 1, but maybe there is.
Is there a 24? There's a 24 that's like. Is
there's
that
a
the?
24.
There is.
Have we got a
Is it?
squad
An,
24 this season?
Who's not?
Shane Duffy was last year.
Oh
with
no, there's
24.
not even a Norwich number 20. That's not what you predict, would you? That I'd know the bus and not the Norwich squad numbers. Oh yeah, I can't.
Shall I fill in the rest, or would you like
So-
another go?
We might need that.
Yeah, we might need you to
Terrible.
jump in. That's poor.
This
2
has
out of
been
11.
terrible. So I'm trying to think. The ones near me.
You're a son of Norwich. You must have got lots of buses.
I've got lots of buses, yeah, but unfortunately I don't really look at the numbers.
Is there a
I'll be honest.
26?
There is a 26.
I think there's a
yes.
26.
Who's 26 on Norwich?
Nunez.
Ah, cool.
So that's a decent player in the starting 11. But
Yeah.
I've not. Have I got to remember where it is?
Give it a go.
Hospital.
Yeah.
Is it?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent from me.
There we
So
go.
the blue
Fair play.
line, it's the sister for the 25, so 25
Yeah,
and
no,
26.
I did get on that bus
University
a little while ago. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah. What else do I? No, there's got to be a 17, isn't there?
Correct, there is.
I
There's
couldn't
a
tell you where it
17.
goes.
Now we're just working out Norwich players.
That's CNATS, isn't it?
Yeah, so the 17 is a relatively new route that goes out to Broadwood Business Park.
There you go.
and
I've
that's on
seen
the
that.
green line. So we've got Cernats on the right, Hernandez on the left, Barnes up front.
Yeah.
We've done the
Nunez
front
in
3, to be
middle,
fair. That's good. So we've got 4.
2 midfielders, 4 defenders, and a goalkeeper left.
Okay. Goalkeeper. So it's got to be. Did you say no number 1?
There's no number 1.
So number 12,
Correct.
surely.
Yeah.
It's long, so we've got that.
Yeah, but I just couldn't tell you where it goes.
So the 12 is the pink line service that goes
Oh,
from
nice.
Wroxham
There you go. Pink.
to the hospital.
Oh, nice one. There you go.
Yeah.
Pink.
Yeah, I'm struggling. So come on, Zach. Actually, I'll tell you what we'll do. If you're watching this or listening to this, pause it, get in your starting 11s, and now Zach will reveal the answers. So if you wanted to play, then you can. So and then you can match up and see how many you got, and then you can let us know how many you got. So Zach, fill in that 11
Okay.
for us.
So defence is quite tricky because traditionally, you have single numbered squad numbers,
Yeah.
but in Norwich, First Bus don't actually have any single numbered bus
Ah.
routes at all.
Right.
Luckily for us, we've got a few odd numbers in the squad this year with Jose Cordoba
Yeah.
liking number 33. He's chosen that, and we've now got a 33. There used to be the 14P last year, but it was renumbered 33 randomly. So that's lucky for me in this game anyway. So we've got Cordoba at centre back, and he'll be next to Brad Hills, the number 40, which is our charcoal line to Pouring Land.
Brilliant.
Nice one.
At left back, I've had to go with Kenny McLean. Now I know he's a midfielder,
Ooh.
but he has played at left back, so
Yeah.
in my head, I'm going to give myself a pass there. But right back is a problem, and the only option I've got here is to move Ben Cruzene from left back over to
Okay.
right back,
Okay.
which in my head I think works.
Inverted,
We've seen Fish
yeah,
play
I see
there
that,
at left
I can
back
see that,
today,
yeah.
haven't we? So that's my back four. Cruzene on the right, McLean on the left, Hills and Cordoba in the middle, and we've got two midfielders left to fill in, and there's not much of a choice here. But Oscar Schwartau is one of them, which is a yellow line 29, not the
Mhm.
X29,
No.
the 29 which goes to Taveram, and the other midfielder is a red line 23. No, that's McLean. I've said that.
Mhm.
Oh no,
We had Nunez, didn't we? That
We've
was,
had Nunez as well. So
Silmane, he's
he's 20.
is
there's
that
one
not the
20.
midfield? McLean, Schwartau,
No,
Nunez.
McLean's at left back.
Oh, McLean's
Oh, yeah.
left back, of course he is, yeah. So
Um, I knew this before I came
Slimani,
in.
yeah, you've got
Mark
Slimani at
Condes is
20.
number 11.
Marcondes 11.
That's it,
There you go.
Marcondes, thank you very much. Number 11 in my head is a wing, so I'd completely discounted that. It's Emiliano Marcondes, the pink line 11. Sprouston to the hospital, so we've got the entire pink line in the squad with the 10, 11 and 12. I haven't gone as far to do subs, so don't worry about that.
we'll let the people watching do that. So how many did we get? That was quite pathetic from us, wasn't it?
Four.
Half
Five?
and half, I
Really.
think. I thought
Five?
Was it?
that's a good shout.
We got
considering
five.
you didn't
I'll
know
take
it was
five.
coming.
I'm sure
Yeah.
the bulk of people out there. I tell you, my dad will love this game. He really likes it. So that's fine. At least it gives him an excuse to watch to the end. So yeah, let us know how much you got. Zak, thank you very much for joining us, and obviously
Thank you for having me.
to First Bus for this sponsorship. We've got plenty of really exciting things coming up as well. So keep your eye on that, and of course we'll be back next week after I was going to say win at Loftus Road. Even I'm getting carried away with the levels of optimism after the game at Loftus Road, and we will see you again for that next week. Thanks for watching.